Beneath the sands of Egypt lie voices that have been silent for 3,000 years. Kings who commanded empires, queens who shaped history, priests who held the keys to eternity. But what if we could hear them again? Not through myths or Hollywood fantasies, but through their own words, preserved in stone, waiting to be decoded. This is the story of how cutting-edge technology is resurrecting the authentic voices of Egypt's most powerful rulers. And what they're telling us changes everything we thought we knew. For centuries, we've stood before these monuments in awe, but we've been deaf to their message. When the last priests who could read hieroglyphs died in the 4th century, an entire civilization fell silent. It wasn't until 1822 that French scholar Jean-Francois Champollion cracked the code using the Rosetta Stone. Suddenly, the dead could speak again. But deciphering hieroglyphs is one thing. Hearing the true voice behind them, the personality, the emotion, the intent, that's something else entirely. Today, artificial intelligence, linguistic analysis, and archaeological breakthroughs are giving us something unprecedented. The authentic voices of the pharaohs, unfiltered and raw. Ramesses II ruled for 66 years, one of the longest reigns in history. He built more monuments than any pharaoh before or after, and he made absolutely certain we'd hear his voice. Listen to how he describes his victory at the Battle of Kadesh. Carved into temple walls across Egypt, I found the enemy chariots surrounding me, 2,500 of them. I was alone. My army had abandoned me. Not one of my officers stood with me. Then I called out to my father, Amen, and he heard my voice from the ends of the earth. Modern historians know the Battle of Kadesh was actually a stalemate, perhaps even a defeat, but Ramesses transformed it into his greatest propaganda victory. His voice booms with divine authority, casting himself as a lone hero, saved by the gods. Archaeologist Dr. Sarah Parcock explains, this wasn't just political spin. This was a pharaoh creating his own immortality through words. He understood that whoever controls the narrative controls history. Some voices were meant to be silenced forever. Hatshepsut ruled as Pharaoh's queen, but full pharaoh for over 20 years. She was one of Egypt's most successful rulers. After her death, someone tried to erase her from history. Her statues were smashed, her cartouches chiseled from walls, her image defaced across Egypt. For a century, archaeologists believed her successor and stepson, Thutmose III, destroyed her legacy out of hatred. But when we listen to Hatshepsut's own words, a different story emerges. I have done these things by the design of my heart. I have not slumbered forgetfully, but have made strong what was decayed. I have raised up what was dismembered. Recent analysis reveals Thutmose III waited 20 years after Hatshepsut's death before erasing her. Why? Not from hatred, but from necessity. He needed to restore traditional male succession for his son. Hatshepsut's voice was too powerful, her precedent too dangerous. But silence her completely, impossible. Enough survived for us to hear her still. Ambitious, bold, unapologetic. In the 14th century BC, one pharaoh dared to challenge 3,000 years of tradition. Akhenaten abandoned the old gods, declared there was only one deity. The sun Diskand built an entirely new capital in the desert. His voice is unlike any other pharaoh's. Listen to the great hymn to the Aten, probably written by Akhenaten himself. You arise beautiful from the horizon of heaven, O living Aten, creator of life. When you set in the western horizon, the land is in darkness, in the manner of death. How manifold are your works! They are hidden from the face of man. O sole God, like whom there is no other. This isn't propaganda. This is poetry, philosophy, personal devotion. For the first time, we hear a pharaoh speaking not as a god, but as a human in awe of the divine. But Egypt rejected him. After his death, priests declared him a heretic. His city was abandoned. His name was struck from king lists. His revolution died with him. Yet his voice survived. And in it, we hear something shocking. Doubt, searching, a pharaoh questioning the very foundations of his civilization. Not all ancient Egyptian voices belong to kings. The most intimate voices come from everyday people preparing for death. The Book of the Dead contains spells, meant to guide the deceased through the underworld. These aren't just religious texts. They're desperate prayers from people terrified of eternal annihilation. Listen to spell 125, the negative confession, spoken before Osiris. God of the dead, I have not committed sin. I have not robbed. I have not slain. I have not stolen grain. I have not caused pain. I have not made anyone weep. I have not killed. I have not made anyone suffer. 42 denials, 42 fears. If your heart was heavier than the feather of truth, the demon Amit would devour you. Complete annihilation. No afterlife. No eternity. In 2019, researchers used AI to analyze thousands of these declarations. They found something unexpected. Variations, personal additions. A scribe added, "I have not made my workers work in excess." A merchant included, "I have not withheld food from the hungry." These weren't generic formulas. These were real people, with real guilt, real hope. We're hearing the voices of farmers, scribes, merchants, all desperate to prove they deserved paradise. The most famous pharaoh of all left almost no voice behind. Tutankhamun died at 19. His tomb is the only royal burial found nearly intact. Yet his reign was short, his accomplishments modest. What little he did say was likely written by his advisors. The restoration stela describes how he undid Akhenaten's religious revolution. The temples had fallen into neglect. Their shrines had become desolate. This land was in confusion, and the gods had turned their backs upon it. Now His Majesty has restored the monuments of the gods. But there's another voice in his tomb. Not what's the most personal collection ever found. Board games he played, sandals worn thin, walking sticks needed due to a wine jars labeled with vintages. In 2014, DNA analysis revealed devastating truths. Tutankhamun was the product of incest brother and sister. He suffered from genetic disorders, multiple strains of malaria, a broken leg that became infected. He didn't die gloriously in battle. He died in agony, probably from complications of his injuries and disease. A boy king, powerless despite his title, whose voice was silenced before it could truly develop. Yet paradoxically, he speaks louder than pharaohs who ruled for decades. Through his silence, we hear the fragility of power, the loneliness of the throne. Today's Egyptologists don't just read hieroglyphs, they decode context, analyze grammar patterns, and reconstruct pronunciation using Coptic, the last descendant of ancient Egyptian. Machine learning algorithms trained on thousands of inscriptions can now detect subtle variations in phrasing that reveal individual personality. The difference between Ramesses II's bombastic declarations and Akhenaten's introspective hymns isn't just content, it's linguistic. Fingerprint. Projects at the University of Basel and University College London are even reconstructing what ancient Egyptian might have sounded like, the actual phonetics, the rhythm, the music of the language. For the first time in 1,700 years, we may soon hear ancient Egyptian spoken aloud with reasonable accuracy. The dead, truly resurrected through sound. We've decoded thousands of inscriptions, analyzed countless artifacts. Yet 70% of ancient Egyptian sites remain unexcavated. Ground-penetrating radar suggests dozens of undiscovered tombs in the Valley of the Kings alone, whose voices are still buried. What do they have to say? Perhaps a lost library. Perhaps the tomb of Cleopatra. Perhaps records of technologies and knowledge we can't yet imagine. The voices we've heard are extraordinary, but they may be only whispers compared to the chorus still waiting beneath the sand. These voices teach us something profound. Pharaohs commanded armies and built monuments that would last millennia. Yet what endures most powerfully isn't stone, it's their words. Their fears, their pride, their humanity. Ramesses II wanted to be remembered as a warrior, but we remember him as a master storyteller, spinning his defeats into victories. Hatshepsut tried to speak with a male pharaoh's authority, but we hear a woman refusing to be erased. Akhenaten preached monotheism to a polytheistic nation. We hear a revolutionary, doomed and beautiful. Tutankhamun said almost nothing, yet his silence speaks of vulnerability, of youth stolen, of the weight of a crown too heavy to bear. 3,000 years later, their voices reached across time, not as gods or legends, but as people, flawed, brilliant, desperate for immortality, and they achieved it, not through gold or granite, but through words that refused to die. The lost pharaohs were never truly lost. They've been speaking all along. We're only just learning to listen. Over 100,000 Egyptian artifacts remain unexamined in museum storage worldwide. Their voices await